men of renunciation is reached by men of action also. He who sees that the ways of renunciation and action are one, he sees truly. Great saints say that whenever you're climbing a mountain, you see many different steps. You may be climbing some steps, but another person may be climbing other steps, and yet another person is climbing different steps. When you are at the bottom of the mountain, then all these paths and steps look different, but when you have climbed and you reach the summit and you look down, then you realize that all the paths that people climbed come together at the top of the mountain. But you only realize this when you reach the summit. A person who has not reached the summit spends all his time fighting with other people over which path is right. The majority of blind sects that have taken place in the world religions, that's happened because of this. When a person is climbing a mountain using a certain path and he tries to pull other people to stop climbing on their paths and to join his path, he tells the other person that other person's path is wrong and he should climb using his path. This is what people are doing. This is what a blind person does. The person tells other people that if they carry on climbing their paths, then they'll fall off and therefore the paths are wrong. This is not the case. There's a very nice story in the Panchatantra, a great Indian scripture, about this called Gatanu Gatiko. Such a blind person doesn't even think, even though thinking is necessary on both paths. If you look at the religions of today, then there's no thinking involved in them. In the story, a Brahmin went to a riverside. He went to bathe in the river, but he had a lot of equipment on him. When he went to bathe, then he thought that someone could steal his equipment while he was bathing, as there were a lot of people on the riverside. Therefore, he buried his equipment on the sand by the riverside. In order to leave a sign, he initially thought about leaving a rock, but he decided against it because a child could come, pick it up and just throw it away. He then thought about creating a pile of sand, but then even decided against this because the sand could get stepped on. Therefore, he decided to create a shivling out on top of the equipment that he had buried. He thought that because it was a shivling, nobody would step in it, especially in India. People would just see the shivling and pass nearby. When he made the shivling, then the person sitting near him saw this. He thought that because a great person is doing this, he should also create a shivling out of the sand and therefore go and bathe in the river. He created it and then went to bathe. A third and then a fourth person also did this. When the Brahmin came out of the river after bathing, he saw 2,000 shivlings on the riverside. How could he now find his equipment? He said, Gatanu Gatiko Lokaha Na Loko Paramartika Shivlinga Prabhavena Gatam Vena Praham Vajagana. Meaning, people in this world just blindly follow others. Such people are not religious. The equipment is buried under a shivling and I can't find it anymore. The majority of people that you see following religions nowadays are like this. They do not follow the path of renunciation or the path of works as said in this verse. They are just fanatics. They think deeply a little and you realize that when you blindly follow someone, then you will achieve nothing in the end. This is what all the sects are like. People follow this their whole lives and realize when they turn 70 or 80 that they have wasted their whole lives in blindly following these sects. In this meaning, the Gita is a revolutionary scripture. It says to stay on one path. Out of all the varieties of scriptures, there's only one that tells you to follow one path, and that is the Gita. So many schools had arisen in India. There were so many knowledgeable people, but for every knowledgeable person, there was a different school. All of these people in the different schools began arguing against each other. At that time, Shri Krishna came and incorporated all of these schools into one scripture. The Gita is a book of synthesis. That is why all the different schools get the meanings of the thoughts from the Gita. There may be different schools such as dualism, non-dualism, individualism, collectivism, etc. But all of them will say that their principles are in the Gita. Shri Krishna himself could see this and therefore he said that all the paths are the same. How are they the same? We must understand this a little. Who do you call a man of renunciation? Who do you call a man of renunciation, people? No? A sannyasi. When renunciation comes to a person, then it comes naturally. It is such a state. It comes by itself, and a person needs to make efforts for it. He should think that he wants to leave everything behind. The person starts thinking about what gives him bondage. He thinks about how much bondage he has created in all his lives. He thinks about how many lives he has created. He thinks about how many whirlpools he has become stuck in. He realizes that nobody has created these whirlpools for him. He has created them himself. If there are any whirlpools near him, he must have created them himself. A whirlpool created by someone else can touch him, but it cannot trap him. When there is water in a lake and it's quiet, and you throw a stone in them, then all the waves will arise. But what was the source of the waves? It was because you threw a stone in them. What if the stone had not fallen into the lake? Then the waves would not have started at all. If you feel that in all the life that all difficulties are surrounding you and you're in the middle of it all, then just think that you are the stone, because only then can you be at the center. If all the other waves touch you, then they can be created by someone else. Are you in the center of the whirlpools, or can you go outside them? On the majority of occasions, we feel that we are at the center. We feel that nobody has as much problems and difficulties as we do. The meaning of this is that you have created all these difficulties for yourself. You should find out from where you created all these problems. You should think about which bondages you had, and you should leave all bondages one after the other. This is the way of renunciation. Remember this, one should leave all of these through choice and happily. Who remembers the story of Kalidas earlier in chapter 4? Guruji says this story often. In King Bhoj's kingdom, there was a Saint Kalidas who had the position of chief priests. All the priests of the palace wanted the position of the chief priest. While Kalidas was there, they could not go into that position. They made a lot of efforts, but they could not compete with him intellectually. They could not compete with him intellectually, and therefore they tried to put him down, and this was their nature. All the other priests got together and made a plan. They knew that they couldn't compete with him intellectually, so they needed another way. In the morning, when Kalidas was sitting on a swing outside his house reading a newspaper, then all the priests were watching him. There were about 15 to 20 priests, and they walked towards him. Kalidas saw all of these priests coming towards him, and he thought that if all these intellectuals had gotten together, then it must be something dangerous. Otherwise, these intellectuals would not have gathered together. Kalidas thought that he would not have to worry, and he would let them come. They came to his house, and he let them sit down. He said that he considered himself very lucky that all these knowledgeable people had come to see him. He gave them all water and tea. Kalidas asked them what he could do to serve them. They started putting their plan into action, and one of the priests told him that they stayed in the palace for a long time. The king respects knowledgeable people a lot. He said that they enjoyed a lot out of respect, but now it has become too much. He said that they should now renounce everything and give up sansar, the material world. They said that they had decided this, but wanted to take Kalidas with them because he was one of them. Kalidas said that this was a very good plan of theirs, it was a good idea, and asked where they planned to take it. The priest said that they go to the town of Kashi in India and they meet a well-known sannyasi. Kalidas agreed to do this with them. He said that if they all say so, then there's no way he could object to it. They all left and reached Kashi. They told the sannyasi that they were the priests of King Bhoj's kingdom and that they had decided to become sannyasis, and asked them to give them sannyas. The great saint agreed to do this and asked them to come one by one. The priest said that Kalidas would go first. The plan was that Kalidas would go first and become a sannyasi, and that they would all go back without him, because once he becomes a sannyasi, then he can't come back to the palace. The priest said that Kalidas was their leader and the most important out of all of them, and therefore suggested that Kalidas go first. But this was Kalidas, not an ordinary person. Kalidas told them that he was a chief priest in the material world, but this is a sannyasi world, and he may have been leader in the material world, but in this work they were before him because they gave him the inspiration for this. He told them that they should go first and then he would go. If Kalidas said this, then people could not do anything about it, and they began looking at themselves. They had no choice and had to do it. One after another, the priests took their initiations. The Guru, during the initiation, always asks the question and thinks that if the person has still not lost their interest in the material world, then he doesn't initiate them. Only when a person has fully renounced the material world and has reached a state of Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. Who remembers that from chapter 4? Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. Free from attachment, fear and anger. Only when the person in that state can they reach sannyas. The Guru asked each of the priests what their wishes were. One of the priests said he wanted to go to the Sarayu river to think about Sri Ram and become one with Sri Ram for the remaining years of his life. The Guru gave him an initiation and named him Ramanand. When a person gets their initiation as a sannyasi, then their name changes. The Guru asked the second priest what his wish was, and he said that he wanted to go to the Yamuna river and sing songs of Sri Krishna. The Guru gave him initiation and named him what? Krishnanand. The third priest said that he wanted to go to Kailash and become one with Shivaji. The priest was made a sannyasi. What was his name? Shivanand. One after one, the priests got their initiations, and then Kalidas's turn came. The Guru asked him what his wish was. Kalidas told the Guru that he couldn't lie to him, and so he had a wish for the half cup of tea that he left unfinished at home. He said that he still had an interest in the material world, and he remembers his wife and children. The great saint told him to go because he couldn't become a sannyasi. Kalidas agreed, and because without the Guruji's consent he couldn't get an initiation, he therefore went back. All the other priests just watched this happen. What I mean is that in the path of renunciation, a person has to leave everything one by one, but he must keep practicing and think about what is continuing to bind him. By practicing this, he reaches a state where he becomes a man or woman of renunciation. Then he has no bondages left and becomes liberated. That was the path of renunciation. What happens on the path of works is that a person keeps performing works, and when he keeps performing works for a while, then they become routine. I'm saying this from experience because I'm on this path. When they become routine, then all his bondages go away. Works show us their uselessness. Remember this. Works show us their uselessness. This is the nature of works. They become futile after a while. The interest in actions reduces over time, especially when a person keeps performing them. I'm saying this from experience. If you're driving every day, then it starts feeling futile. On the first time you start driving, you find it so much fun and it gives you happiness, but when you keep on driving, then it becomes a punishment. It becomes futile. And when someone tells you that they're giving you a driver so they can not have to do driving themselves, then you become happy and you're grateful for it. But if a 17-year-old person has just learned to drive and his mother tells him that she'll give him a driver, then he'll reply that he wants to drive himself because he has learnt to drive. He tells the driver not to drive him. When he turns 60, then he tries to make the arrangements to get a driver. He has done so much, and therefore the action feels futile for him, and everything starts slowly releasing from him. When a person on the path of work starts performing works with concentration, then he realizes the futility of becoming involved in actions. The Gita uses the phrase nishkam karma, desireless actions, because when a person stops being attracted to the fruits of actions, then all actions fall away by themselves. The majority of people perform actions because they have an attraction to the fruits of works and want something. This is why they have to carry on performing works. We are all not performing works in order to stay active. We are performing them because we are not free from bondage. Why does a housewife or house husband prepare food in the morning and the evening? Because she or he has no freedom from bondage. She or he does not want there to be any arguments when the husband or wife returns home at 8 p.m. in the evening, and therefore they prepare everything. If there was no need to prepare food because they were getting food from the hotel every evening, then they would have no interest in preparing the food. any actions we perform in life arise out of attraction to the fruits of works. When one performs desireless actions and becomes free from attraction to the fruits of works, then they reduce their ties to karmas. A man of renunciation gives up everything through efforts, and a man of works gives up everything through understanding that it is all futile. Therefore, people who reached the destination and became released just see that they have become free from karmas. That is all they see. This is the true way to become released from one's karmas. When one is free from bondage, then he becomes liberated. This can be done through both the path of renunciation and the path of works. Whether you eat a chapati or you eat bread, your stomach will be filled either way. What is important is where your interest lies and what your nature is. This is what it depends on. We talked about last week, the path of renunciation is for introverts and the path of karma, action, is for extroverts. When a child reaches its mother, then it is enough. Shri Krishna says that one can reach this goal. Okay, verse 6.